This is your man Akil back in full effect again. And today I wanted to go back to actually having a dialogue with people about the topics I want to discuss. This evening, I want to tackle the so-called Oscar so white controversy. And since I'm starting out by reaching out to actual acquaintances of mine, I figured what better people to reach out to than two of my best friends on the planet, my man Justin Gerald and my man Keith Stewart. These guys are really well-versed in the vagaries and disciplines of show business. So I figured they'd be the best people out of all my acquaintances with whom to discuss the whole issue of underrepresentation of Blacks and other minorities in Hollywood. So to begin, why don't each of you in turn give me your general impressions in a nutshell of the whole Oscar so white controversy?
Well, one thing I've noticed about the Oscar so white controversy is that this is just a symptom of the greater issue of how the studio system in Hollywood kind of deals with people representation of persons of color. The Oscars are usually an award show where when the nominations are set up, it's because studios kind of lobby a little bit more so about which movies are going to be there. That's why you get movies that are considered Oscar bait, such as like Bridge of Spies, for example. Spielberg's in it. Tom Hanks is in it. We're gonna go for an Oscar right here. So I say Spielberg's directing, yes, but we got Spielberg, we got Hanks. That's Oscars, and a lot of the issue that comes about from studios is that they won't necessarily push movies of color that often to get that Oscar buzz, and sometimes with the electorate, that's part of the deal that comes along with it.
I'm gonna talk about 4 movies. Here's a movie about a very influential person who was in charge of a country as the political, the head of state. And the person was controversial for some reasons, but well-liked by others. And the movie shows that person going from middle age to old age. Tell me why the Iron Lady wins Best Actress and Mandela Long Walk to Freedom gets nothing. Now, am I saying Mandela Long Walk to Freedom is a good movie? No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's no reason that this pretty standard biopic gets less attention than this other pretty standard biopic, aside from the fact that the studio starts with the idea that the Iron Lady is going to get Oscars because Meryl Streep, and positions it accordingly because Meryl Streep. Mm-hmm. Mandela Long Walk to Freedom, they try to make a campaign, but as we will talk about, it's so overstuffed that you have to start with it and put so much money into the for your consideration thing that it's not going to happen. And then to compare to it, there's another movie who's nominated for Best Picture this year called Brooklyn, which is just about a white lady. And there's nothing wrong with this movie, but as we will mention, it's just sort of odd that this movie immediately is, Oscars. Oh, we must. It's not just that it's good, it's well positioned. In fact, I think that's the issue with Oscar movies and underrepresentation is that movies starring non-white people are not well positioned to begin with. And it's not really about quality. Do I want, for example, these run-of-the-mill Tyler Perry Medea movies to get Oscars? No. Sometimes I look at the NAACP Image Award. Sanaa Lathan, what a woman. But the point is, she was in this movie called The Perfect Guy, which is just trashy, like Fatal Attraction type thing, except the opposite gender, right? She won an Image Award for like favorite actress. Now, people are voting for that. But the point is, like, I say this is a joke. No one can take these awards seriously because they're voting for this crap. But like, it's because there aren't that many movies made about Black people, and we're using Black people in this example, that she gets this award. So to bring it back to your focus, what's the point? It starts way, way before the Oscar nominations are announced. Once the nominations are announced, I don't think there's as much of an issue.
Well, I find it interesting. It's not that often that in the public discourse on these kinds of issues, you see a lot of actual hard facts and numbers and data being brought into the analysis. But I did stumble on an article on the subject in The Economist magazine that I remember sharing on Facebook. Apparently, according to a 2013 survey of the Screen Actors Guild, 70% of its members are white. apparently, if all of the guild's members had like an equal probability of receiving Oscar nominations, regardless of race, then over a 2-year period, 28 out of the 40 nominations would have been of white actors. So based on those numbers, as well as on some other data, they concluded that the problem is not so much that Black actors are underrepresented, but that white actors are simply overrepresented. Oscar nominations haven't really underrepresented Black actors on the whole. It says apparently that Blacks are 12.6% of the US population, and 10% of Oscar nominations since 2000 have been received by Black actors. If anything, Hispanic, Asian, and other non-white actors are vastly more underrepresented. 3% of nominations went to Latino actors, even though they make up 16% of the US population. And I also remember about a year ago hearing, I think it was Benedict Cumberbatch, talk about how a lot of prominent Black British actors like Idris Elba, David Oyelowo, and most recently John Boyega have actually come to the States and found that there's a lot more opportunity for them in Hollywood than back home. What do you think that has to say about the whole controversy? Is this as much of a problem of underrepresentation of Blacks, or is there something else at play?
Oh, it's absolutely more about overrepresentation of whites than it is specifically about Black people being underrepresented. We're still underrepresented in some ways, as we'll, we aren't making the movies. They just happen to like putting us there sometimes when they can count on us for a couple of years. But if you look at, if you're talking about the Oscars, how many Asian actors have won Oscars? Literally one. Mm-hmm. Hang Sungor, who was a non-professional actor who was in the Killing Fields movie. There's not been a single Asian actor who's won before or since. Some have been nominated, but not a single one has won before or since. Very few Hispanic actors have won, and as you said, there's more Hispanic people than Black people in the United States these days. To put a pin on it, though, I think that a lot of the reason why it always comes down to Black people is because it's the United States, and our history is so fraught with mistreatment of Black people that it's always going to come forward as the issue when we are not well represented. That doesn't make it good or bad. That's just how it's going to be until the United States figures out how to not be bad with Black people. So when, I don't know, that's not gonna, I don't know when that's gonna happen.
You're exactly right about how U.S. history has always been about white versus Black, it seems like. And particularly with Latinos, the fact is just a lot of underrepresentation as far as I'm concerned in terms of movies just in general. Like they don't usually, I think with African Americans, you'll get starring vehicles. Denzel Washington become a star. Will Smith become a star. I don't notice that as happens as often with folks who are Hispanic or folks who are Asian, where they really get starring vehicles in movies. We're starting to see that more in television.
Yeah.
But they're not really getting that inroads yet on the big screen.
The television, I think, is the way that things are changing a lot because, first of all, there's so many damn channels, and some of them are on the internet, so people can choose. I mean, we're at what the head of FX Television has called peak TV. Just meaning that there's so many good shows. It doesn't mean that they are the best shows ever to exist. It's just that you can find a show you like. If you say there's nothing worth watching on TV, I mean, you didn't try very hard, and you should go figure it out because that's your problem. And that didn't always used to be the case. And if you actually want to find a show starring someone of color or a woman or a gay person or a trans person, you can find it. It's not as good as it could be. You can find it. We talk about these things in representation at Netflix even. Not only are they featuring more of these smaller movies, but they're featuring a lot of these TV shows, and that could be a way towards showing things in the future.
It started doing that in television with the big networks. It started to change their representation because of the impact of Netflix, Amazon, Hulu having their own shows.
Taylor Kitsch, he's an actor. Do you know who he is?
I've heard the name, but
yeah, exactly. He was on Friday Night Lights, the TV show. He's fine. Whatever. He's a person. His last name is Kitsch, which is not a good name for talent, but he's fine. I have no problem with his role on Friday Night Lights. There are a lot of great actors on that show. So at some point, people decided, this is the it guy. He's the it guy. He's the it guy. Let's give him all of the movies. And he showed up in the Wolverine movie. He wasn't Wolverine, obviously, but he was Gambit, and he was terrible. And he was the star of Battleship. Why are they making this? I don't know. He was the star of John Carter from Mars, which had a good idea behind it, actually, but completely flopped. They gave him like 5 movies to flop. They gave him so many chances. And they just kept giving him chances. Whereas if you looked at the Sony emails from a year and a half ago, they still consider Kevin Hart a niche actor, despite the fact that his movies come out and they reliably turn a profit, right? Now, I'm not sitting here like we must all go to Kevin Hart movies, whatever. You don't like him, you don't like him. But still, they're calling Kevin Hart niche when he's bringing in money hand over fist. They put his little ass in a trailer, and people go see the movie in January when no one sees any movies. Right?
Yeah.
Right along too. They're making money, right? And Taylor Kitsch is white bread as they come. Even when the money is there, like it takes game-changing amounts of money for them to pay attention. They think that we are risky, which would be true, except they will willingly take a risk on some nonsense otherwise.
I agree with everything you said in terms of them, but I kind of find more egregious examples as more problematic, like Exodus last year with Ridley Scott, just like basically saying, well, we can't have a person, you're in Egypt and we're gonna have white cast. And it's like, well,
one black person.
One black person? Oh, one black person in
Chadwick
Egypt.
Boseman.
Chadwick Boseman.
There because he's all of the black people now.
Yes,
that's what happens. By the way, with black people, is that one person plays all the black. So
that's more of an issue to me, I guess, is having a part of a person of color being played by someone white, like it's Michael Jackson movie. Apparently, it's coming out. There's not as many people of color or women, for that matter, who gets to be the director and make this film. And if you have more representation from behind the camera in casting. Basically, if they're telling a story, and you have Ryan Coogler telling a story, it's going to be a little different than when the Coen brothers tell a story. And you have more representation behind the camera, more representation of people of color, of women on the camera, behind the camera. You're going to get different kind of movies made.
I think you make a good point. I mean, different people of different backgrounds, they relate to different things, and the kinds of stories they want to tell are generally going to reflect what they can relate to the most. My personal belief, I mean, and this is partly just my black nationalist streak coming out, I feel like if we as black people really want to see more of our stories told and recognized, we basically need to step up to the plate, or those of us who have the resources and the experience and the connections to do it, need to step up to the plate and make our own films to the greatest extent possible.
That's another can of worms right there.
Well, I think that's what's happening now with, they're making movies on iPhones now, and they're putting them online. And I think that there are a lot of Black or Hispanic or Asian filmmakers making these movies, but they don't get the press. We're talking about the Oscars, which is not the only important thing. Plenty of things are more important than the Oscars, but since we're talking about the Oscars, the issue is that they don't get the press. So if the issue is, can we see movies starring different people? Yeah, we can actually now. Not as many. They don't get as much press. You may not have heard about it, but I know, for example, when I go to the Astoria movie theater, if I go there on a Saturday, there is always one giant Bollywood movie playing that I didn't know was there. And I will go there, and there will be 6,000 South Asians there, really excited about this movie. Right now, Bollywood's a whole thing. They're their own industry. But the point is, like, you can find a movie somewhere. You can seek it out. But the issue is, why should we have to seek it out? There are movies that I have to avoid because they're so omnipresent. And then here's the thing. I understand that those are movies that cost a lot of money. So whatever. But here's the thing.
They're giving them the money to do that movie. Even though we think these movies are terrible, they somehow they make money.
Keith, you made an interesting remark a few minutes ago when I mentioned that if African Americans want to see more of our own stories told, more of us need to tell more of our own stories and make more of our own movies. You said that opens up a can of worms. What did you mean?
I think it comes then you start going into if you're sort of education sometimes when it comes to filming. But you actually made a big point about just if you have an iPhone and make movies, that actually can kind of subvert that actually. Because I know when I went to school, it was like 2004. So it was a matter of just getting into college and all that. then it becomes education sometimes if you have learning that, and worrying about just trying to be able to get equipment. And equipment is expensive, but if you have iPhones making it, and that kind of mitigates that a little bit, you can kind of avoid some of the pitfalls.
True that. So what do you guys make of the whole argument that when it comes to Oscars So White specifically, there's this whole view that, look, at the end of the day, the Oscars are going to nominate and acknowledge whoever they want to nominate and acknowledge. And those of us who may not agree with their decisions, why the hell should we care at all? One of my favorite rap lyrics of all time is that lyric from that song Award Tour by A Tribe Called Quest from back in the day, where he says, I never let a statue tell me how nice I am. Well, how do you respond to the idea that, the hell with the Oscars? Who cares what the Oscars think? I think Spike Lee actually made a similar remark recently. It wasn't even after this Oscars So White thing came out. It might have been a few months before or maybe a year before. What do you make of that?
There's some truth to that, where it's like, yeah, fuck the Oscars, because because it is something. It's art. An art. Making art into a contest. It's subjective. Everyone has their preferences or anything like that. To kind of make things like that important is probably kind of against what art's about. However, you kind of want validation, I guess, for what you're doing, and unless they come up with something that's going to surpass Oscars, that's been I guess thought of as the gold standard, I guess, with the gold statue that in order for us to validate for your craft, to be like, sometimes you do like to have people saying you're very good at what you do. Here's a reward for this. Sometimes sometimes it can be something that's very stat driven, which is a lot of sports. But other times, when it comes to art, it's really this is the thing that you get.
Yeah, like I remember people saying, and this is not about race anymore, that like when Scorsese hadn't won a directing Oscar yet, and some people were saying, well, he shouldn't care because so many of the best directors never won a directing Oscar, right? But Kubrick never won, and Hitchcock never won, and Kurosawa never won, and a lot of people never won, and Altman never won, but all the people saying that were cheering when he won. So it's like everybody was so happy. So it's just like, I understand. I think a lot of people say that to give themselves an emotional salve, like when it doesn't happen, because it is okay if it doesn't happen. But these people are artists. Artists don't do anything without emotion, or unless they're bad, Michael Bay. But like, like I'm saying that they care. They do care.
You look at them every time someone wins an Oscar. They have this speech, and they always have this great emotional speech that usually comes out and then needs to be stopped. But
but like it's true. Like,
but this is really
what you want. Look, if you have an artist that you are fond of, you want them to be happy, and you want them to get recognition. So ultimately, that's what it's about.
I hear that. So how many prominent non-white or female directors are there? You've got Spike Lee, who has lost a lot of the cachet he had a generation ago. Ava DuVernay is the sort of up-and-coming Black female director.
And so one significant movie.
Exactly. And the only other prominent female directors I've heard of as a very occasional moviegoer are Catherine Bigelow and I guess Sofia Coppola. Like,
Coppola isn't even a thing anymore.
I'm not sure she really counts. Yeah.
No, even though she did do that Railway special, that's not the point.
Yeah. That's obviously a bigger problem. It's a different problem. It's a related problem, I should say, because representation matters, so the people on screen matters. Mm-hmm. But the people who can really affect representation, because ultimately the director makes the decisions. And I was reading an interview with Cuba Gooding Jr. recently, a Black actor who's won an Oscar, and he was talking about, he's on the new show about O.J. Simpson. He's playing O.J. Simpson on the FX show. I saw the first episode; it was pretty good. And it was an interview about him and that, and how he, now being prominent again, has talked about spending his 10 years in what he called like actor exile or actor jail or something, where he was taking direct-to-video nonsense. And a lot of it was because he was picking bad directors, and he realized, like, no matter what, the director ultimately has the final call. Ultimately. Yeah, the studio can interfere, but, like, if you are a director, you're going to push back or you're going to leave.
I remember in the late 90s, after the first Star Wars prequel came out, I actually read in Time magazine that Liam Neeson had briefly retired from acting, and supposedly his statement was, film is really a director's medium. We actors are just pawns in the director's vision. Now, of course, he went back to acting, but I think briefly he was so turned off by the experience of being in episode 1, not that I blame him, he actually took a break from acting because of it.
And they say a lot of actors, when they get tired, they go to the stage, because you get to invent things every night on the stage. And in movies, it's the director and the editor who have a lot more power to shape their performance. So, like, a lot of actors won't watch their movies because they don't want to see what chop suey has come out of it. When they think, they'll do 20 takes, they don't know which one ended up in the movie. I mean, they may be told, but they might get changed at the last minute. Like, oh, that was the best take you did, but the audio was bad. But that was the best take. The point being that, like, the directors have so much influence and importance that and it's pretty easy to see how an actor can get more money. Okay, your movie was big, and they give you credit for it being big, right? So you get another movie, right? You get your Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence and so forth these days. But if your movie was big as a director, how much credit are they going to give you, right? Now, it depends. How many people do you know that people will go see a movie because they directed it? Like 6 or 7. And they're like white guys. They're white guys. I mean, even me, what I will go see, right? I was always a Tarantino movie. Okay. What's a Scorsese movie? Okay. Or it's a Spielberg movie. I won't even go see every Spielberg movie. But the point is, there aren't that many that you go see because this guy is behind the camera, even though that's actually more important. And when you see from the director, I mean, they still put from the director of in things when they're promoting something. And a lot of people will ignore it, but that is really important. But when I'm talking about power and how much money and we'll give him this director role, you see how important it is if you look back at those Sony tapes, the Sony transcripts that were sent out when they were, like, if you look at the movie Steve Jobs that came out this year, right? It's Danny Boyle directed it. Now, Danny Boyle has won an Oscar for Best Directing. He's made several hit movies. And so I'm not insulting Danny Boyle here. But the people at Sony, who apparently are just incompetent humans, were talking about, no, we don't want Danny Boyle. He doesn't make hit movies and all this stuff. And, like, because they think no one's going to find out. And, like, they're talking about even famous white guys they're talking about with, like, I don't know if we can trust this guy to bring us a movie that will make money. And what they really mean is accessible and so on and so forth. And when they talk about a black director, they don't often want to give it to him, and it's usually him, because they don't think he'll make an accessible movie to everyone. Everyone was surprised that Creed could be accessible to everyone because Ryan Coogler had directed a niche indie movie beforehand. But Sylvester Stallone ultimately actually ended up trusting him because Sylvester Stallone more or less has the rights to the character. And so it takes someone like that. I'm not saying Stallone's a hero, but it takes someone like that trusting someone and giving someone a chance. It's just like in employment when you see 2 equally matched people, but someone might be black and not trusted because of it. It takes someone taking a chance on them, whereas they will take a stupid risk on a Taylor Kitsch every day. Every day. Every day.
Good
Every
point.
day. Why is this person the star of this? Why? Why is the person the star of this?
In closing, I'd like to ask each of you in turn, what advice would you give to ordinary members of the Academy when they're called on to evaluate movies and decide who they want to vote for various awards? What should they keep in mind?
You're part of the Academy. You obviously take your jobs. I would think you take your job seriously.
We'll give them the benefit of that.
I'm giving you that benefit of the doubt, yes. But every so often you're going to get, because the studio sets up that have the Oscar bait movies go toward the end of the year, watch movies all year. There's plenty of movies from January through December that you're going to find some really good movies. And there's definitely a lot of, you'll get critics where will give releases of movies of like, these are the best movies of the year. And I'll know, like, I might know like half of them because it's like, they don't push those movies. Watch those movies and give yourself, make a note. Let's say in January you see this one movie that comes out and it's like a really good movie. Like, You might not remember it, but it's like make a note so that when it comes time to actually decide to vote for the awards, you can revisit it
and
or
talk it up to other people. Because even if you aren't highly ranked, you may know somebody who knows somebody who's highly ranked. Talk it up. Get chatter started, because word of mouth is going to be a big thing for something that doesn't have as much money.
Word of mouth's always the key when it comes to that's how campaigns are run usually. You just try to build buzz around the movie. So build up the buzz. You can build a buzz on any movie. You don't necessarily have to take the studio's word for it.
Right. They talk about Harvey Weinstein as someone who knows how to play the Oscar game, and it is a game. It's politics. These people are muscling movies that don't have as much money out of the game. And if you're an Oscar voter, I totally understand how you could not see everything when it just gets to you and you're busy and so on and so forth. So I think it's a shame that this has to be how it is because the studios are doing it this way. But if you're just a regular Oscar voter, you have to put in extra effort. And the same thing when I think the studio people are too far gone and they're just going to end up losing to the streaming services. So you know what? Screw them. But the fact is, yeah, they just need to put a little more work in.
My advice to the members of the Academy is, to the extent that you can, depending on what movies come out and what ones you see, try and look for films in which Black and female and other non-mainstream actors and actresses and directors are not necessarily playing roles where they're fighting for racial justice, gender justice, or what have you. You know, roles where we're doing great things, but that are not necessarily based on us being pigeonholed according to our skin color or our gender or what have you. For example, this year you had Concussion come out. Will Smith's Black. He's playing a doctor who's an accomplished professional who's of African descent, if I understand correctly. I haven't seen the movie. And, he's fighting a crusade against the NFL to get them to take the problem of injuries of players seriously. We're not always just all about our race and the struggles that come with our race. We're human beings too. And I think that the more we're recognized for those kinds of efforts and roles, the better off the whole of Hollywood and the whole entertainment industry will be.
I talked about Brooklyn. Another movie that came out this year that got some Oscar nominations is Joy. Joy is a movie about the woman who created the Miracle Mop. And mostly it's about Jennifer Lawrence scowling. And that's an entertaining thing. But, like, where's the Black Joy? Where it's about a woman who, is fine. It's whatever. And is just sort of living her life. And it's not really, apparently in Joy, they spend a lot of time on her being a woman. So maybe it's not a great example. But, like, where is the story about the Black woman raising her family and she's just raising her family? I think that's one thing. To go to a completely different issue, one thing I noticed that was really great was when I started noticing commercials of Black families, and it had nothing to do with them being Black. They were just trying to get some Tylenol like everybody else. So I want to, and you see some TV shows like this because TV is better because you have years to tell the story. But you don't see as many movies that are about like a Black guy living his life and trying to achieve something, and it's not about, oh my God, what happened to him as a Black man? They should not tell those stories, but they should tell the regular stories also.
As well, exactly. We're right on the same page where that's concerned. Well, fellas, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I do want to thank you very much for giving me as much of your time as you have. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all your support and everything. Not just with this video, and hopefully with future videos that we'll also do, but also with my new knee. I don't know if all my viewers know this, but I actually got my knee replaced just last month, and I'm still recuperating from it. And my boys here have definitely had my back all the way through, and I'm eternally grateful to them for that as well. Thanks a lot for the discussion, fellas, and I'll let you know as soon as I have it chopped up and edited and ready to go up to YouTube, and I hope you'll like the final result.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
All right.